Hi folks,
Hi YouTube.
welcome back to View of Two.
Uh-huh.
Today we are going to be discussing the concept of marriage
Yep, in our impromptu.
in our impromptu. Sorry.
It's fine.
So impromptu.
Yeah.
We're going to be chatting about what marriage is and how has it evolved, and
If it has.
and where are we with it now?
And is there a point to marriage?
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Is there
Okay.
a point? That's a hectic one.
Well, I don't know, right? Yeah.
Okay, so what brought this up was something that you hadn't experienced
Yeah.
recently. Yeah.
Recently, we were with my brother, Utami, and he was in...
Now, folks, let's just explain that one.
We don't need to explain that one.
To us white folks, we don't understand the principle, but it's officially in a white concept. It's Non's cousin.
There is no official white concept.
But we'll get on that one in another episode.
Another episode, yeah.
But it's her
Babamkulu's...
spiritual
It's not
brother.
spiritual.
Okay, just checking.
It's my Babamkulu's
Okay,
son. He's my brother.
so your cousin brother.
No, my brother.
Okay.
Yeah. See, now
I
we'll
messed
talk
it
about
up.
that another time. Yes, you have. So anyway, we were with him in this car, and he brought up the whole idea of marriage, and was questioning what it is.
You brought up the idea of marriage,
I?
and he said, well,
Why did I
why
bring
do
it
you-
up?
you just had the question in mind, I assume. But I remember we were driving him to Jeep to pick up his car,
Yeah.
and
Well,
you,
don't give up too much information about him.
well, 'cause sorry, he drives the Jeep, sorry.
Okay.
And he answered your question.
Okay.
So you asked him about marriage, and he goes, "What?"
Okay, then I don't know why I was asking that question.
Yeah.
But Utami brought up a very, very interesting point, and he said he doesn't believe in marriage as such, or at least not in the so-called traditional sense. He doesn't understand the point of having a piece of paper and this whole ceremony, I guess, that usually goes with this piece of paper, with the celebration of this piece of paper.
Yeah.
His question was, why can't two committed people just be two committed people? Another thing that he brought up was, you cannot promise to be with someone forever. And to
Well, you can promise it, but
it's unrealistic
Yeah.
to
okay.
make that promise, and you have to be aware that the chances of keeping that promise are pretty slim. So why lie to each other to begin with? Why don't you just say, listen, I dig you. Okay, these are not his words, but it was something along the lines of, I really dig you, want to hang out with you for as long as I can hang out with you. And then
So it's
when
like a more fluid thing than a. I suppose the concept's the same. I want to be with you, but it's not the same as when a marriage. You expect 100% I'm gonna stay with you.
But do you expect that? I mean, divorces are so easy,
Yeah.
or are so much easier and so much more prevalent.
Maybe it's expected from one person
Maybe.
in the party.
Maybe. So, but anyway, he got me thinking, because I said, well, the contract is supposed to help you stay together. And he said, if you need a contract to help you stay with someone, should you be in that relationship with that person? And so, as a person, I'm going to be very honest. I've always wanted to be married eventually. There was a time in my 20s when I didn't need it, but I've always thought I was going to get married, and I've always liked the idea of marriage.
Yeah.
It got me thinking, what is marriage? And so, luckily, folks, we have one person who is in such an arrangement. So
Well,
maybe we'll start with you.
I've been married. I haven't lived with anyone, so I don't know the difference. For me, the concept of marriage was always you are two individuals who come together with a common goal, and you decide that you want to spend the rest of your life together, and you do that. So it's a very sort of rigid understanding.
Yeah.
But from what I can tell, a lot of people these days don't have that sort of recognition of what marriage is. It's more like, what is the point of that? Why can't we just have that without the contract, without the formality?
Yeah, but not only that. So it's very, very interesting, because you got married in a Western concept of
Yeah.
marriage, which is one male, one female.
Yeah.
And that isn't, I mean, in South Africa, that's definitely not the case.
In some religions, it's not the case either.
Yeah, right. So in Judeo-Christian, what, I can't say this word.
Judeo-Christian, yeah.
Yeah, it would seem that this marriage concept is between one man and one woman. Although, of course, and when you and Amanda got married, you were going to the church that I'm still going to. And what's interesting about that is that we haven't always practiced that.
It's only been non-practicing for just over 100 years.
Yeah, before that, you have what Zulu people do a lot of, and I don't know about other traditions. I won't speak for them and speculate. But we have something called polygamy, and polygamy is when you have one man who's committed to more than one woman. You know, is that not a marriage? What is marriage? And then you have, I've heard, again, I don't know, amongst Muslim people, there's polygamy practice there as well, where it's one man who's committed to more than one woman. And then you also have the opposite. I don't know where this is practiced. You have one woman who's committed to more than...
It's polyandry.
One woman who's committed to more than
one man. Yeah.
One man. Yeah. And then you have something called polyamory, where it's what they call an open relationship. Yeah. And what about those marriages that are open, which is very different from polygamy and polyandry? Those are different things.
So they're kind of frowned upon as a bit taboo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is marriage? What is relationship? What is commitment? And I've had to ask myself, why do I want to get married? You know, because I still believe in the concept. It
might be to do with a bit of security.
Yeah, but what type of security?
Yeah, no, and that's what I mean. Is it if you have to sort of lock someone into something, is it really secure?
Yeah.
Because they might be held captive in the situation, and then you won't really know, is this person here for me, or is it just purely they don't want to get divorced because it costs $1 million?
Costs too much money. You know, and also, if we're saying one man, one woman committed, in a polygamous, I'll talk more about the polygamous situation because I'm more aware of it. It still is one man and one woman, kind of. It's just one man and one woman at that time, and then the one man and one woman at that time as well. If that makes sense, it's still two people in that.
But it's seen from the outside as one man and many women.
Yes, but when they
all his sister wives.
Yes, but when they make that commitment to each other, it's that one woman and one man making that commitment to each other, and then with his second wife.
And that woman looking at the other woman going.
Not necessarily. There are some sister wives who get along.
Okay.
You know, but the real question here is, what is commitment?
Yeah.
What is marriage? Is there a need for commitment? Is there a need for marriage? And so I want to put you a little bit on.
Well, I think it's become a tradition.
Right.
So people, instead of thinking through like we're trying to do and seeing, well, how does this fit into our relationship? Rather, they'll say, how do we fit into the marriage scene? Okay. Instead of saying marriage, how does it fit in with us? We say, how do we fit in with marriage? And so it's become that the marriage is the dominant thing, and we almost become slave to that rather than the marriage working for us. Yes,
but what is marriage? You're in one.
Well, it's
but I'm not saying what is your marriage, but just generally, what is marriage?
Well, marriage is in the Western culture, it's a man and a woman. That's changed. It's become a little more fluid than that now. But in my case, it's a man and a woman who commit to each other and enter into a contract of marriage. And then you'll have a commission of oaths or a marriage officer perform a ceremony where you exchange vows and you make certain promises to each other. You exchange rings and you sign a contract. Okay. So that's what the physical
understanding of what marriage is. So it's possible to be married and not be committed.
100%. Yeah.
And so why do we want to enter into marriages? Do we want to enter into marriages for the status?
Yeah.
Do we want to enter into marriages for
acceptance?
Yeah. Do we want to enter into marriages for stability? Right? Because the contract, if we're being honest, a contract does give you that stability. It makes a person think twice, no matter what the contract is. right? It makes a person think twice because there is physical evidence that somebody has made a contract, has entered into a contract with you. And I think what's really interesting is they always say contracts are for people who don't trust each other. You know, and is that what we're saying when we get married? That I don't trust you enough to want to stay with me, or to work through the difficult times, and so I'm going to use this piece of paper that's going to force you to stay with me even when you don't want to.
There's also another aspect of it, is there's a religious aspect where you feel you've been taught in religion that out of wedlock sex is a sin.
Okay.
And so until you've met that requirement, you're living in sin. So there's another aspect of it.
So and please don't get upset with me. I was watching something once and it said Jesus messed with my sex life. You know, the idea that sex is... I watched it. I didn't
came
make
out of
it.
left field.
I didn't
What's
make it. Spelele, you know, we were watching something. It was very clean.
Very clean.
It was a clean thing that we were watching.
Disclaimer.
Yeah, it was a clean thing. And so we had that conversation of, do you get married just to have sex?
In those,
for those people who are very religious.
Yeah, I wouldn't say just to, but in order to legalize it in the eyes of God, definitely.
Is it to legalize it in the eyes of God, or is it maybe
to placate your guilt?
Maybe religion understands that this is something that certain people wouldn't want to get into, and so there has to be a gift. Assuming it's a gift, there has to be a gift that it has to be worth it, and so it's this prize that you get. So if we're thinking about it in purely gender, sex roles, so to speak, the man gets to have sex and the woman then gets to tie him down through the contract, and so we're both holding each other at ransom.
It also has a lot to do with the pair bonding. So you'll find that when a man and woman pair bond, generally they'll want to have a sort of a secondary agreement that just sort of almost ratifies that.
Why?
I don't know why. I'm just saying that's what they want to do.
Because
it's in the psyche of us all for some reason. It's kind of carried through generations and generations of just having that marriage. Almost, to me, it's almost like it's part of societal norms that society expects you to have
for the West.
Yeah.
So when I think,
don't traditional people have? They don't have a contract.
Customary marriages used to. They didn't need a
slap you on the back and say I'm done.
No, there's exchange of gifts. But there is no contract. There's no piece of
so
paper.
your question is around the whole contract issue, not so much the commitment between two people for a relationship. Is it the fact that you're signing almost like a business deal or business agreement?
I think I'm asking more myself, and I'm asking whoever's watching this to join this journey.
Yeah.
For me, a person who hasn't been married and has always wanted to be married, am I truly aware of what it is that I say I want? What have I asked the question, what is it to be married? And then for somebody who's been married, I'd like to ask, what is marriage? What is this thing that I want to enter into? I've
been in it so long, I don't know what it is anymore. It's a part of me. It's going on 25 years. It's a part of me.
You know, and also to say, given the Western traditional part, and also because I come from I have one of my grandparents comes from a polygamous family, so it's within my DNA as well to understand that there's more than one way in which people can be married. What do we have these conversations with each other? How many of us would be willing to be with someone in a committed relationship without the bells and whistles, without that contract? And how many people right now who are in marriages and are going through a tough time would leave the marriage if it didn't have that proviso that if I leave, there is this expense that I'm having to incur.
Yeah.
And so it's no longer about the relationship now. Now it's about that contract. How many people who have been in long-term relationships, because we hear meaning that it's difficult. It's difficult in marriage. How many of you would give up if you didn't have that contract?
Well, maybe that's what it
Forcing you
is.
to-
It's a way of keeping people in, so when it does get tough, they're not just willing to just run away.
And so then
So
what
it is a bonding.
commitment?
No, it is a bonding from the external, and so it almost relieves you of the responsibility doing it yourself.
And that's what I was gonna say is why do you need that external thing?
Yeah.
And I've heard people who've said, like, even in religious things, if I didn't make this promise to God, I don't know if I would have tried to make it work. And I kind of brushed past this, but it is important to explain that for those people who do it for religious reasons, there are two parts to marriage. There's the spiritual part. Unfortunately, government doesn't deal with your spirituality, and I'm not,
or maybe fortunately.
or fortunately, but that's got nothing to do with civil obedience, civil duty, civil interaction. And so government then needs to recognize, for legal purposes, because the rule of law is paramount, that these two people are together, and it has all sorts of implications on how you live and what happens if a person passes away, assuming there is no will, etc., etc. But really, I'm having to ask, do I want to be married? And the answer is still yes.
Well, that's good to know.
But because for me, marriage is a commitment to be with this person.
But the commitment is primary and the marriage is secondary.
Marriage is the commitment.
Okay.
Marriage is the commitment to me. For me, it's a commitment to be with someone through thick and thin. So to be kind of their ride or die. I feel like I'm talking a lot here, and you're not really.
I've been married for a long time.
So you should be advising on what marriage is and stuff like that.
I told you what it is.
You said you've been in it for so long.
Yes, but for me, it's that commitment. It's just showing that's what I'm doing. I'm doing it because I love you. I don't have to have the piece of paper to prove that I love you, but it's part and parcel of that offering.
So for me, it's not part and parcel.
Okay.
For me, if I go back to Tammy's question, and if I need a piece of paper to be shown or to show that I'm committed.
So it's not about the paper, it's about the commitment.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. I'm not sure if I'm comfortable with someone asking it of me instead of just having faith that we are talking about it and now committing to each other. And I don't know if I'd be comfortable in asking that of that person. And so I want to be in a committed relationship where I'm a ride or die, as we say with that person, and they are a ride or die, as in like we.
You got some gangster references there.
There we go.
Ooh.
But also a committed relationship in terms of raising a family.
Mm-hmm.
That we're going to be there together, raising, if we're given that opportunity to have children, raising children together. So it's about a family unit. However, as much as it's easy for me to not talk about the contract, I have to be realistic. A contract is what government needs.
And a prenup.
Yeah, it's a contract. It's what government needs. I believe in prenups. I believe prenups protect the marriage. And maybe we can have a segment on prenups. I think prenups...
It protects individuals and it
marriage.
protects your properties. It protects a lot of things.
Yeah. And so because it's something that is required for government, especially if something were to happen to my partner, I need to show that I am the next of kin, and unfortunately I'm committed in my soul isn't going to cut it.
Or if you're in your hospital situation, who's the husband, who's the wife? I'm a loving relative. No, sorry.
Yeah. So because society recognizes that and only recognizes that as a committed relationship, I understand the need for it. But if I'm being honest, if common law marriages had more of a
legal bind.
bind to them, I'd be very, very comfortable with the common law marriage. But that's as far as the rule of law is concerned. I still have a spiritual part that I'm interested in. I still believe that God, for me, needs to be part of that commitment. However we would do it, I'm still trying to think about that. I would require that. I'd require that triangle of
You've put a heck of a lot of thought into this. You've had a long time to think about it.
I'm single. It's been a while.
My word. My brain is like
it's
scrambled
been a while.
eggs. Okay.
Because I'm trying to think, what is it that I'm saying I want? What is it that I'm expecting of the person?
I haven't put that much thought into it, man. So I that's why I sound like a bit of a mute here.
View of 1.5.
Yeah. 1.1.
Yeah, so please help me think about it. For those of you who are married, Hiram is clearly not helping us here. What did you think you were entering into? What was the purpose? Is it still that? If you could do it again, would you still be married? What is marriage? Gentlemen, what is marriage for you? You know, we always are under this belief that men are being tied down. Do you feel that way, or do you think marriage adds to something? I know in culturally, for Zulu men, you're not considered a man, truly, and you can't sit amongst men until you're married. So is there a bit of a status symbol for you? And women, is it a way to tie a man down? Is it a way to own? Is it a way for you as well to kind of have some sort of status, to be like, yeah, somebody wants me? Why do we want to get married? Is marriage still necessary for committed relationships and for families? You're laughing at me.
No, I'm not laughing at you, I'm laughing with you.
Although I wasn't laughing. Do you want to add something?
It was a giggle. No, I think for me, marriage has been an amazing experience. I was very young when I got married. I think I was going on 23. So, and for some reason, when I was 18, I had an experience where I knew I was marrying the woman I was going to marry. I had to wait, 5 years for that?
Yeah.
And
lucky you.
Never had a doubt going into it. Apparently she never had a doubt, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
And we've grown together phenomenally over the last 24 and a bit years. And I couldn't see myself being single. That's how good it is.
Oh, wow.
Or wanting to be single.
That's nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so from that respect, what marriage is, I don't know, but heck, I enjoy it.
How can you know, whatever. I'm not even gonna.
But marriage in
doesn't make sense to you guys what he's saying, but whatever.
Maybe you got to be married for as long as I have, and have as good a wife as I have to understand it. But
yeah,
I think it's a combination of many things. Love, allowing, not so much tolerance. I think allowing is a better way of saying it.
But you mean tolerance?
No, tolerance is a negative connotation. You allow the other person to be who they are. It's an opportunity to be selfless. It's an opportunity to see life through someone else's eyes, especially when you have children.
Yeah.
Then you start to see that, and it's been an amazing experience. Couldn't say what it's like not to, because I haven't been for so long.
Okay.
But from your perspective, I can see you've put a heck of a lot of thought into what marriage is.
Yeah, because when first of all, you've always been encouraged to want it. And then coming from where I come from, where it's frowned upon when you don't enter into it, or you don't want it. And then being the overthinker that I am, wanting to make sure that I know exactly what I'm stepping into. I have, and then always being told how difficult it is. I'm like, why are you trying to get me into something that's difficult? I just don't get it. Is it worth the difficulty? Are things I need to
and also,
asking.
When you are more mature, getting into a marriage, there's a lot more baggage that comes with it than when we were very young. My wife and I were very young. There isn't much baggage, so the difficulty in that respect isn't so bad.
No, but it's people, because you come from a group of people. It's people who married as young as you did, who will say it's difficult. You know, there are things and trials that you have to go through. So I wouldn't say that.
But it's just compounded with extra baggage as well, extra kids, extra all those other things.
And it can be, but that's what ride or die is for. People choose what they want to combine. It can't get more.
No, look, not saying that you don't want to do it. It's just
Yeah.
that there are extra little issues that that wouldn't be there if you were still
single. But
young. Yeah.
well, so here's the thing: if you're like me, and you're old, I'm in my 30s.
Old.
I'm in my 30s. I'm in my late 30s. And you've never had a child. You've never been divorced. There is no baggage, right? And so.
But that's not the norm, though.
Perhaps, but it's. Do you think it's possible to get married young and regret it because you don't know yourself very well, and because you don't allow for growth within the marriage, and so you then have that baggage, and you then have that misery in the marriage as well. There's so much to unpack here.
It's a complicated affair.
You know, so help us out. What do you guys think? And Hiram has tried. I know I've kind of
sprung it on me.
I did not spring it on you.
You sprung it on me.
I didn't spring it on you.
Yeah. My wage.
But I know I've spoken a lot because of the two of us.
Yes,
I've
but
had to think
that's
about it a lot.
that's how you therapize yourself, is to talk it out.
Yeah, but I wasn't looking for a therapy.
You're looking for
session.
therapy from the folks.
I am not
Come
looking
on.
for a therapy
help,
session.
No, help understand what marriage
help
is. Folks.
yourselves out. Help yourselves out. You know, really, really think about it and share and discuss. I think there's so much to learn from each other, and there's so many different types of marriages and so many different types of committed relationships, and we're living in a world where marriage is really being questioned. So we just wanted to bring it to you.
It's been rejected a lot as well. Not even questioned, just like, oof, it's out.
Yeah. You know, what are you rejecting for those of you who don't want it? And for those of you...
Those court battles.
Those court battles.
Yes.
Do that... Okay, you know what? This is going to go
That'll
on
be
forever.
another... There's a whole nother demographic of movements like MGTOW and all that, which we can always discuss later. And why people don't want to even think about getting into relationships with women. Yeah.
So we did a segment of what people want in long-term relationships. For those of you who haven't had the opportunity to see that, please go and have a look at it. And so we thought we'd follow it up and go, okay, so we've said what women and men want in long-term relationships, but what are these long-term relationships? Was really what we were trying to unpack. And of course, when you think of long-term relationships, you think of marriage. And so that's why we had to unpack.
That's the norm,
to unpack what is marriage, and talking about different types of marriage, and then having none apparently have a therapy session on YouTube. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to.
Well, folks.
Yeah.
Thanks for spending the last almost half an hour with us.
Thank you.
Please consider subscribing and notifying yourself of our content, and please share and like.
And comment. I honestly do respond, or we do respond to your comments. We do read them, and we absolutely enjoy them.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.